Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov Chess channel and welcome to the Tata Steel Masters tournament in 2020. We're now in the day 3. So far we had, I think, great games. I couldn't cover yesterday some more games because I had some family work and family stuff, and today we're continuing with the round 3 with a very cool and thematic game between Magnus Carlsen and Aryan Tari. I think for those who have troubles maybe to play as black, and if you face maybe a stronger opponent like Tari did now against Magnus Carlsen, this opening that he chose, I think he really surprised Magnus Carlsen. I don't want to reveal really the result, but I think Magnus was really surprised with the opening preparation by Aryan Tari. And this game has also, I think, a thematic endgame in which again we see Magnus Carlsen is trying to win equalish endgames. He loves really the 0.0 endgame. That's why I always like to call him the endgame alien. He's really fascinating when it comes to endgames, and I really love to see how he always finds new attacking possibilities, even if the game is about equal. So before we start to analyze the game, I really have a huge announcement at 8 o'clock 8 p.m. So it's about let me see, what time is it now here in Croatia? It's 1819. So in 1.5 hours we're starting my new series, Become a Master in 1 year. So please invite your friends. Maybe if you have friends that are beginners, that are trying to improve in chess, you can study with me. We'll try now really to be more and more and better and in chess in a year. I think I've prepared about 200 subjects that we're starting to learn, and I think these subjects are really important. So you can join my stream. It will be at 8 p.m. So feel free to join me, and you can also learn, I think, some new ideas and some basics in chess. So I've covered the basics in chess series already, but I think we'll have more complex ideas and with more examples in this series, so you can really study these basic principles in openings. And I would love to, also for you to make something, if you want to maybe have 1 or 2 of your games analyzed, please send me your PGN at yozarov@gmail.com, and we'll have then some analysis of maybe of your losing game. I would be it would be very cool, I think, if you send me one of your losing games, because it's very important to analyze your games when you lose, and then we can also analyze it in stream. So as I said, at 8 p.m. We're starting this series, Become a Master in 1 year. I think we'll have some fun, but we'll also learn something new about chess. So let's check out now the game between Aryan Tari and Magnus Carlsen. Magnus played here with the white pieces: d4, knight to f6, c4 by Magnus. We have e6. After knight to f3, we have again the counter Nimzo Indian setup, and here d5. So far the queen's gambit declined, and Magnus goes now into the 3 knight variation with knight to c3. c5, we have the Tarrasch defense, and the Tarrasch defense, I think, is very popular now these days, because there is a simplification line. There is also a pragmatic idea here for black. It's most of the times a really unequal game, so the Tarrasch breaks already the pawn structure in the center. In the game, c takes d5, which is really one of the most natural ways, because what you want to do, or what you don't want to do, is to be left with an isolated pawn. So for instance, if you take out this pawn, then this bishop can get out, and you see after c takes d5, knight to d5, maybe knight to d5, queen to d5, you see queen takes d5, e takes d5, black is left with an isolated pawn. So from an endgame's perspective, this could be a slightly worse position for black. So that's why Magnus Carlsen undermines the pressure in the center immediately. But now Aryan Tari plays a very interesting line, c takes d4, and this line, I think, Magnus I think surprised really, because here after queen to d4, which is now a very good choice, because if you recapture with the knight, then we don't have this isolated pawn situation. Knight to d5, knight to d5, and now queen to d5. You see, we don't have isolated pawns. We have now a firm pawn structure. We have here 2 pawn islands. White has also 2 pawn islands, so it's not a problem here for black. Again, it's an equal game, and I'm seeing only 2 games in the database in top grandmaster level. Both of them ended in a draw. So that's why queen to d4, at least again after potential trades of pawns here in the center, we want to have this isolated pawn situation. But Aryan Tari simply takes, e takes d5. Although this is a new position in which black has again an isolated pawn, but now at least we can get a new tempo with the queen. with the move knight to c6 and then kick away the queen somewhere. Then black can get an extra tempo in order to develop faster. In the game e4 played by Magnus, here we have d takes e4, queen to d8, king to ed8, and now knight to g5 attacking this pawn, and now bishop to e6. You see, king to e8 would be a mistake because then you risk bishop to c4 and you cannot protect anymore this pawn. Even if you try to cover, you lose maybe one pawn, but I think then also afterwards you lose this one. So that's why after the move knight to g5, king bishop to e6, knight takes e6, f takes e6. What we can notice now, okay, black is up a pawn, but still this can be a challenge with bishop to g5. We're simply attacking the knight and then we want to take out the pawn. So in the game, knight to c6, queenside castling, king to e8 was played. You don't want to play, of course, king to c7, then you're inviting your opponent's knight into the game. You get an extra tempo again against the king, so that's why here king to e8, and now bishop to b5. What now the main goal about this idea, about this game? The main goal, I think, for both sides is the pawn structure, and what Magnus is trying to do here, he wants to weaken the pawn structure after move bishop takes c6, b takes c6, and then maybe something like bishop to f6, g takes f6, and then he takes knight to e4, and this knight could be perfectly fine because this pawn on c6 would be a long-term problem. So that's why you don't want to risk more pawn islands. We can already notice that Aryan Tari has one weak pawn and also this weak pawn. Okay, Magnus Carlsen can always recapture the pawn on e4, but if you continue maybe with an e6 pawn, with an e6 weakness, and then also with the c6 weakness, this could be a huge problem then in a potential endgame here for Aryan Tari. So that's why he has to defend. Rook to c8, king to b1, we have bishop to b4 by Aryan Tari, here bishop to f6, finally g takes f6, and now knight to e4. Here f5, very important move by Aryan Tari. It is a good choice. First of all, what we can notice, we get an extra tempo. What we want also to do is keep our pawns on light squares because we want to play freely with our bishop. If you put many pawns on dark squares, then your bishop is sometimes only used in order to defend the pawn. So here Magnus attacks the pawn, knight to g5, king to e6, and now a3. So bishop to a5, we have f4 cementing the knight on this very active square, h6, and now knight to f3 again played by Magnus Carlsen. We have rook from h to d8, trades of rooks. Here you have to take with the knight. Again, I'm pointing you out, if you take rook takes e8, then you risk this idea, bishop takes c6, b takes c6. It's not that the game is over, still it's a tough battle here. Still white really has to struggle to win this game, but I think with this weak pawn on c6 we could play something like king to c2 and then maybe even challenge the rook here on the d file, trading off the rooks, and I think this knight will always find some good ways to attack the pawn. We could then maybe play with our king towards the center and still maybe attack even this pawn. This is also pawn island. You see black would be left here with four pawn islands, and I think these are clear targets to attack. So on the other hand, white is continuing in this potential scenario with only two pawn islands, so it's a much healthier pawn structure here for white. So after the move rook to d8, you see knight to d8, rook to d1. This move order gives now Magnus Carlsen extra tempo. He gets now very actively into the game with the rook. He wants to try rook to d7, rook to c7 by Tari, and now knight to e5, a6, kick away the bishop, bishop to e2, and now bishop to b6, and now knight to g6, king to e8. We have, if you try king to f6, it's okay. It's maybe a slightly worse continuation here for black, but still I think this will be an equal game after rook to d8 and king to g6. Still we could try something like rook to g8 and maybe fix our bishop here on f3, attacking this weakness, but still I think these are opposite colored bishops, and many times these games end in a draw. So here after move rook to d8, let's see, knight to e5, a6, bishop to e2, bishop to b6, knight to g6, and now king to e8, bishop to h5. It seems now that this is a very risky position for black. I joined the game in this particular moment, I think, when I watched it on chessbump.com. I haven't seen the current evaluation, and it seemed to me that it's really dangerous, this bishop activity against the king. But basically you don't have good discovered attacks. If you try here, Aryan Tari played simply knight to c6 and knight to e5 doesn't bring you so much. You have only one check. Again, we'll play king to e7, knight to g6, and again you could do some perpetuals, but nothing special is going on here. So here, very, very calm game, I think, by Aryan Tari. He played really an outstanding game so far, without inaccuracies, mistakes, or blunders. He defended here really like a lion against such a great endgame player like Magnus Carlsen. Here, bishop to h5, knight to c6, and now g4. Here, Magnus Carlsen tries now basically the only move that can spice up some things, because here in the game, Aryan Tari plays the move f takes g4. If you try here to maybe get with your king somewhere, then again you risk some ideas. Here g takes f5, and after e takes f5, then rook to d5 could be a problem. You really having a tough time to defend then this pawn. In the game again, Aryan Tari played here f takes g4. We have rook to d6. Here Magnus Carlsen doesn't want to take the pawn immediately, and here king to f7, which is the correct, really the correct move to defend this position. Here in the game, Magnus tried now f5. Again, he's trying to make something. He's trying to roll the pawns. He wants to get something out of this piece activity that he has. And again, Aryan Tari plays a great move, king to f6, because if you try e takes f5, that would be much better here for continuation for white, because then we have this move knight to h4, and you see now we get really a nice path with our knight. Knight to f5 is a possibility. We can also then afterwards grab this pawn, then afterwards we can grab this pawn, and the most important thing is that after potential move knight to g4, we're protecting also our h2 pawn, and in this potential continuation, Magnus could end up with an extra pawn. So that's why Aryan Tari played again after the move f5. Again, you see how Magnus complicates things in an equal endgame, and Aryan Tari played really the great move king to f6, which is correct. And now after f takes e6, Aryan Tari attacks simply the bishop. This is simply great. Here rook to d5, really complex endgame, I think. Here king to f6 again by Tari. We have knight to f4, bishop to e3. Now Aryan Tari also counterattacks. He wants to simplify the position. He wants to trade off more pieces. We have knight to g2, bishop to g5, bishop to g4, and now knight to e5, simply cementing our position on dark squares. Everything is glued together. Everything is compact here. The pieces are perfectly fine. Bishop to h3, and now h5. King to a2, rook to e7. Knight to e1, and now bishop to f4. Very important move, attacking the knight. And now after knight to f3, knight takes f3. Okay, Magnus has now this counter attack with rook to f5, but it's not a problem. You can take this one, but after knight takes a2, this is simply a drawish endgame. Both players have equal material. You cannot trap this knight. The knight still can come to g4 if you attack it, so it's not a problem. The knight has good breathing squares, and here the h5 move was also very important by Aryan Tari. Here king to b3, knight to g4, bishop to g4, h takes g4, and here king to f5. Again, a great move by Aryan Tari, because if you take immediately, then maybe pardon me, let's go back. Here, if you take immediately with the king, then with the rook, then that's what I meant, then you could risk some problems around the square b7. So that's why Aryan Tari again played with his kings towards the center. We have now an equal endgame in every line basically. Here after trades of rooks, Aryan Tari goes into this opposition position, which is very important. Here b4 by Magnus, king to c8. We have a4. Here Aryan Tari goes again into the opposition, but now after b6, here king to b8, and now king to d7. It's not a problem because we have reached now a stalemate position after king to c7. So incredible game. It's really unbelievable when Magnus Carlsen goes into the endgames. He sees these moves like f5, e6. He wants to break the position, but Aryan Tari deserves his role here. Really an outstanding game. And the cool thing about this game, both players lost only 5 centipound loss here in the game, which is basically a perfection by both of them. So Aryan Tari played a really outstanding game. Magnus Carlsen is probably not satisfied with only a draw with the white pieces against Aryan Tari, who is of course not the favorite in this tournament, but we have seen in the past that Aryan can play, and he can maybe be the dark horse of this very cool tournament. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this video. As I said, you can join me at 8 p.m. On my YouTube chess channel. On my live stream, we can learn some chess. So we have now today our first lecture, and I think we'll have some fun and you can learn something. So feel free to join me. If you want to see more games from this tournament, check out my link of the Tata Steel Masters tournament. Here's the link. And if you want to see maybe the best chess games of all times, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.